Actually something that takes a lot of practice because you have to train your eyes to see certain colors. But what you're looking for is what's called a color cast. When we look at this image of the Lifesaver, what color does it look to you? If you could recognize a cast in there. Blue, greenish blue. Yeah, the whole thing. Like, what does it feel? Cool, warm, cool brown? I don't think that's. All right, so we can collectively say that it's kind of greenish blue, right? Greenish. And it'll be a little bit off because all of our screens are different. So let's go ahead and open up that. Let's bring that color wheel back up.
How do you do that?
So right now, we're going to look at the color wheel. And, oh, guys, it's okay. So the color wheel, the way you color correct is you're trying to find balance. It's also called color balancing. So if it's green, what you have to do is you have to introduce the opposite of that color. So we're going to introduce magenta. If it feels yellow, then you introduce blue. If it feels red, then you introduce cyan, and vice versa. The thing is that these colors right now, they're opposites of each other, and they're color profile space. We have RGB and we have CMYK. So RGB is for light-based applications, so that would be your screen space. And then CMYK would be for print-based applications, and that would be outputted to pigment. So you have one property that is a positive, that would be light-based, and you have one property that is more of a, I guess, pigment-based property. So it's like a dead space. So it's that's the negative space. So that would be CMYK. What they do is they cancel each other out because RGB, when combined, makes pure white. CMY combined makes pure black. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our Lifesaver, and we're going to open up curves. Samantha, close it. You gotta close it out. Turn them all off. You gotta turn them off.
I know.
Thank you. Okay. Whenever you do color correction, you always want to adjust the contrast first. Never jump into doing color. Because what happens is you'll adjust the color and you say, okay, that looks great, but it's too dark. So then you'll adjust it, and you're gonna end up desaturating or saturating the color more. So if you establish the luminosity first, which would be the contrast, you're getting it closer to where the brightness and darkness should be, and then you adjust the color so that way you're not impacting those color values too much when you have to readjust the contrast again. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to adjust the RGB value, which gives us pure white. So I'm in the RGB channel right now. So I'm going to do an S curve. So I'm going to lift the highlight. And because this image is already kind of high contrast, I don't have to add too much depth to it. So I'll lift it more than I actually need to for the highlight. So I'll brighten that up so I can start seeing the image. And I'm just going to generically plot a point in the shadow area and just kind of sharpen up those edges by adding a little bit of depth. And now I'm going to add a midpoint and brighten that up.
How do you do that, Ryan?
And I'll brighten up my highlight again. Okay, so now I'm pretty close to where I want to be. And actually, if you all could just stand behind me while we do this, so that way you get a more direct understanding of how this works. I like how like gross my station's starting to become. I have like Ricola and multiple beverages. Okay, so my contrast, we can see where we started. So that's before adjustment, that's after adjustment.
Mine's look exactly like that.
I'm not done yet. Okay, so now we're going to go into each individual color channel. The thing is, we don't have CMYK, so we have to memorize what the opposite colors are, which is why we have our color chart. I memorized it already, thanks to you all. Thanks. So you're all lucky. I'm making bad jokes today because I'm sick.
Don't be that bad. Stop being so PC.
We got
All right, here we go. All right, here we go. Here we go. It looks green, right? So we're gonna go to the green channel, and we need to introduce some magenta. Check this out. What I like to do is I like to look at things in the image that are supposed to look a certain color. What color is this rail supposed to be? White. Does it look white right now? No. What about the shadow? What color are shadows supposed to be? Not through painting terms, but just like how you imagine shadows are supposed to look. Gray, right? What color does that look right now?
Blue.
Gray bluish.
Green.
Green.
Okay, I'm looking from the
Greenish.
side. Oh yeah, then
Green.
then green.
Okay, what about this metal box right here? What color is that supposed to be?
White.
Gray.
Gray.
Grayish, yeah.
What about this rope?
White.
Well, it's dirty, so,
So it's
probably
it's
it's
In that
yellow.
realm, right?
It's all too-
Okay, how about the letters here?
Well, they're
What color?
black. They're supposed to be black. I mean.
And
but
then
they're
does it
like-
look black?
It's
so
like
you gotta
greenish.
add magenta because or wait, what's the opposite of? Is that cyan or blue? Do you think?
But just like thinking of what does that look black?
no, it
No.
looks more bluish,
It,
right?
it looks like it's tainted, right? Like
Yeah.
there's some cast in there.
Alright.
Okay. So I like to look for like little details in the image, because that to me will give me like a real world reference point, right? So if I know white's supposed to look white, let's try to get that as close to white as possible. So I will go ahead and just generically plot a point in the middle to start with, and as soon as I introduce magenta, you can see that we're starting to get a whole ton of separation now happening.
Yeah, that looks way more.
So then now there's that. So the other thing too is that this is really sensitive, and color shifts even with like the slightest adjustment. So I like to use the arrow keys, and this allows you to fine tune. What I do though to make sure I knock out all the green is I'll actually turn it the next color. So now we're magenta. If I go back up, we're green. So I'm gonna go like that, and I'm gonna come off just a little bit until it starts to feel not so much magenta. Maybe right there. Now when I'm looking at it, it feels blue. It feels really cold, the overall image. And if I look at the black in here, it feels like there's a little bit of blue in there. If I look at the shadow feels really blue. If I look at the metal feels kind of cold as well too. Everything overall feels cold. Can you see that, everyone? This red doesn't look orange red. It feels muted, and that's because it's being tainted with that blue cast. If I add yellow into here, what it's going to do is it's going to warm up the orange, and it's going to create separation between the water and the lifesaver.
So what's your blue part of it?
So check this out. So now and the other thing too, whenever you add magenta, you're adding blue because they're neighboring colors on
okay.
the color spectrum.
Makes sense.
So now I'm going to go ahead and add some yellow. Look at that.
Start warming up.
Starting to warm up. But now it's starting to feel a little green again. So I need to go ahead. And the other thing too with color correction is you're never going to get it with the first move. It's a process where you're bouncing back and forth between each color channel. So now we're close. I'm just making generic moves right now. I'm going to go into the red channel because it feels really cyan now. Like this rope feels cyan. This sky feels cyan. Let's just see what will happen if I introduce some red. Nice. You all see that?
Mm-hmm. Starting
Yeah.
to get a little more deeper.
Starting to, yep. We're getting more separation, but we're getting some pink in that shadow right there. We also have pink in here. So now what we have to do is we have to make more specific color adjustments. Everything in here sits inside of this value scale. So we have black, we have black, and then we have white. So color is going to land in those areas of luminance, of light. So I can place color in the shadow specifically, or place color in the highlight specifically. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my, let's go to the blue channel. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and readjust that first point I plotted. I'm going to place it in the shadow instead. Look at my shadow now. Right there. I'm turning the shadow yellow. Right there. So I'm going to make that shadow yellow. But now my white feels too warm. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the highlight area where the white point is, plot a point there, and now let's cool that off by adding blue. So if I add blue,
Make S as well, right?
yep. So now this is going to,
So each one of the curves, the red, the blue, and the green all end up with S curves?
sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. It just depends on if you're getting a cast. So in here I have some pink or red in there still.
Yeah.
It's really easy to see cast in the shadows. And then this rope feels a little too pink for me as well. So I'm going to go back into the red channel.
Rope is just dirty.
And now that feels really... Okay, so now the white point feels good right there. But now I need to adjust my shadow. So I'm going to plot a point in the shadow area. So I can make the shadow more red, or I can bring it down.
Mm.
And then balance that out right there. Zoom out.
So go ahead.
And then now, let's go back into blue. Because I know that I need, that water doesn't look right to me. It feels too blue. Like it needs to be dirtier, the water. Because the world is a dirty place. All right. It feels a little green to me. I know can you all see it?
No.
It feels green. And that's what I mean, training your eyes to see
Yeah, I
color.
can't see it.
So inside of the letters, it feels like there's a little green tint,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
inside this box here, there's a bit of green tint in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get a view of both of them. I'm going to go back into my curve. And now let's go into the green channel. And now I'm going to go ahead and adjust this. Let's add. Ooh, look at that. There.
No, it's like gray
Turning-
pinkish.
Turning blue. It's turning blue now. Turning blue again, because we're introducing magenta. Those letters, however, though, are starting to look good.
Yes, they're big and black.
They're going to have a little red underneath because it's printed on red, but it should feel like a nice clean black on top of red. Okay, so now I just need to go, because this is turning blue now. This is starting to turn a little blue in here. So I'm going to go back into the blue channel. Add a little bit of warmth in the highlight. Now I'm going to back out. And that's starting to look really good. And then now what I do is, after I get the color nice and balanced out, I will readjust my contrast.
Oh wow, yeah. Then everything really pops more.
And we're getting lots more separation. And now that I've adjusted it, my water feels too blue still, and it still kind of has this overall cool feeling to it. So I'm going to go back into the blue channel. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow in the shadow. And look at that water now.
Oh yeah, it almost looks like yeah, like dirtier, I guess.
And then now, if we go here,
Like
that's where we started.
Wow, that's insane. I need to take a photo class.
Every photo you capture, whether it's with your cell phone or it's like a really nice digital camera, the colors will always be off no matter what. This is something that you just have to do because computers don't have good eyeballs.
So